what I've been working on recently is a new book called Prosperity Architecture for Organizations that explores the 9 fundamental design principles for sustained value creation and prosperity. Now, when I talk about prosperity, I'm not really talking about prosperity in the narrow way that most of us are trained and taught in economics and at the MBA level. At that level, the language, the lingo is revenue, cost containment, profits, cash flow, value maximization, and that's precisely what I taught for years and years in corporate finance. But what I started to get dissatisfied about was that that is precisely the framework that all businesses operate by, and yet where have we gotten ourselves? We know that in the late 2007 to 2008, we went through a massive global financial crisis, a huge tightening of credit. Businesses have experienced stagnation in market demand. Growth has been difficult. Obviously, there are extreme winners in this economy, even given the global financial crisis. However, there are also extreme losers. I think that what we're facing, what we're dealing with right now is much more intractable than we've been perhaps lulled to believe. And in order to really start to get traction on these massive global issues, inequality, extremes, winners and losers, great instability, experiencing crisis after crisis, both environmental and financial, I believe we need to apply a new form of thinking. And as Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them. And so what I'd like to offer is some insight about how we might be able to apply some new thinking to start to stimulate real economic growth, real business growth that doesn't work in the traditional way. So how I explain it is that the traditional approach to stimulating growth happens from the outside in. From an outside in approach, you start from the outside. You assess the external landscape and you identify possible growth opportunities. You do strategic and competitive market analysis, then do your financial analysis, looking at all the potential incremental cash flows, both positive and negative, and determine which options are going to be more profitable. And then you determine which of these more profitable options would be the best fit with the organization internally in terms of its capacity and its desired trajectory. And then from there, you deploy organizational resources that are aligned with this chosen direction. And then from there, you command and control, and you make whatever organizational changes are necessary to execute the new strategic plan. That I call an outside-in approach. You start with the outside, the market considerations, and then you figure out what's necessary to make things work. It requires internal reorganization every time there's a new strategic direction that has been identified. Without the collective self-awareness about what's keeping it blocked, the organization in a traditional growth framework, an outside-in approach, is likely to bump up against the same blockages that had kept it from initiating those sales opportunities in the first place. In contrast, the new thinking that I believe is going to be more helpful in stimulating economic growth for businesses and globally is an inside-out approach. And by that I mean you start from the inside. And so I think in order to start from the inside, we need to have some kind of map of where we are, a way to measure ourselves and where we are right now. So we want to identify the organization's degree of prosperity consciousness. That is, where is its mindset? What are the assumptions culturally, collectively, within the organization? And then we want to identify the organization's relationship to that level, to that mindset and degree of consciousness by looking in more detail at different aspects. So what I mean by that is, for example, what is its relationship to these various domains? You know, when we first start off, organizations do not have the most developed relationship to each of these 9 domains, but they have some rudimentary relationship to each of these 9 domains. So at the second step, what we want to do is at least explore what the organization's relationship is to these 9 domains. Our relationship to these various domains is what brings us to our level of function, but it's also what keeps us stuck. And so by understanding what our relationship is to these various domains, we can start to understand better what our organizational prosperity consciousness is. And that starts to give us insight into what's blocking us. What's blocking us from enjoying the potential growth opportunities that are all around us. And then from there, after we start to develop some internal collective awareness of where we are and how we might be stuck and what the possibilities are for us going forward, that's when we can now start having more of an outside focus, looking at the market landscape and considering what the best direction to move in is. But by doing all these other more internal processes and developing our collective awareness about where we are as an organization and what's keeping us stuck and what is our level of consciousness about prosperity, this is going to give us a lot of insight into what possibilities we have as an organization to move forward. So after we've identified the best direction to move in and done the financial analysis to support this new direction, then we can start to rally people, inspire people, and establish accountability for this forward progress. We start by looking inside ourselves and what's keeping us stuck, and then from there deciding what would be the most appropriate direction to move in. The outside-in approach is willful. That is, it says, I want to do this, and I'll do whatever is necessary to make that happen. In contrast, the inside-out approach is more developmental in approach. What does it want for itself, and what the next level of prosperity consciousness and prosperity behavior would actually entail. And prosperity is defined much more broadly to be not only maximizing market value, which of course matters for shareholders, but it's also about taking care of the other factors that are going to harness growth, sustain growth, and value creation for the long term. And so it's a different mindset organizationally about what is prosperity. And to come back to the prosperity architecture, there's a lot of concepts here about what prosperity is that challenges our traditional notion of prosperity. So hopefully you've got a sense about how prosperity architecture has a different approach to cultivating and getting us into a conversation about the most appropriate way to stimulate growth for a business.